Time for a little Q&A, but first up I just want to let you guys know that I'm going to be doing a presentation at the Escape the Plot Forest Summit in a few weeks, and the details about that are going to be down below. It's a free event. Click the link and check it out if you think you would like to be there. I'd love to see you. Let's get started with all of the writing craft questions. Nicole said, any tips for writing a connected series? Subplots that continue through several books? How many drafts until you're ready for betas? And thanks, hope you get better. I will give Rosa some extra pettings for you. That's from her. All right, so I have definitely done a video about writing a series before, and I will link to that up there. I'm actually trying to remember right now what advice I even gave in that book. But as far as subplots go, I mean, you want to treat it the same way you do your plot. When you write a series, no matter how many books it is, you need a plot, like a completed arc for each book and completed subplots for each book, and then also an overall series arc, and you're probably going to have at least one overarching series subplot as well. I kind of feel like the most common, or just like the easiest way to see this, because you see it so often, is if you imagine, you know, some sort of trilogy. You have the series arc of ultimately defeating the bad guy, and the series subplot or B story is probably going to be some sort of romance that's happening between the protagonist and somebody. Maybe it's a love triangle, maybe it's not. Or it might be like, it's something a little less external and a little more internal, like a conflict or a falling out between friends or family members. That's going to be the subplot. So what you want to do when you're planning your series is think big picture. Ultimately, what do you see the main plot of your story as being? Like, what's the ultimate climax of your book going to be? And also, as far as your subplots go, how do you see those tying up? But also really making sure your book one has a solid arc all on its own. I think the books that do this best are the ones where, and again, this goes for subplots as well as plots, they pose a question or a mission or a goal at the beginning, and then the reader sees that question answered, or that goal accomplished or not accomplished, that mission done or not done at the end of the book. But then a new question, a new goal, a new mission presents itself, and we have a setup for the next book. That way it feels satisfying as its own story, but still leaves the reader excited to read on and see how the world's going to expand. Also, really keep in mind that with subplots in particular, your second book, your third book, however many books you have, you're probably going to discover subplots along the way, because it's almost inevitable that as you write a series, your cast of characters is going to expand, and as you lose some characters and welcome new characters in, you know, you're going to discover new subplots as you write and as you get to know these characters. So allow yourself to be, you know, a little bit loose and flexible with it. As for how many drafts until you're ready for betas, I will be perfectly honest with you right now, and for years this has been the case. I write a draft. When I have a first draft, I will do one pass on it on my own, and then I give it to betas. That is because I have gotten to a point where I can, after I do my outlining or zero drafting, whatever I do, I know the first draft is clean enough that I feel comfortable handing it over to my betas. I know I'm not going to be wasting their time. Like, I've done everything I can at this stage, and I need to let my brain rest, so I will turn it over to them. When I was first starting out, though, I probably picked over my very first draft of my first book ever. I gave that at least 2 or 3 passes before I had the courage to show it to anybody. I think it's just, you want to find that balance of, some people, I think, rush it. They give their first drafts to readers because they're so excited to get feedback, and they don't really give it the time it needs and like go over it themselves and try to make it a little bit better. And then on the other side of it, you have people who are terrified and they just want to pick over the draft over and over and over again, and they never show it to betas. You definitely want to find your happy balance. I mean, I think if you outlined and you planned and you plotted and you have what you feel like is your best effort at a first draft, you're ready to show it to others. If you kind of did the pantsing thing and you just whipped out a first draft and you know you need to give it another pass, then go ahead and do one more pass on it and hand it over to betas. But there's definitely no set number. It really just depends on you and kind of like your gut feeling that I think is just really important. Next question is from Pasquale. How do you use each story you write to level up as a writer? When you've written quite a few stories and feel you're getting the hang of your style in the writing game, how do you continue to teach yourself through every new story you write? Man, that's a deep question. That's the kind of question that I would get on a panel and I'd have to sit there and stare into the void for like 5 minutes before I came up with a good answer. I think for me personally, and again, everybody's going to be different with this, but for me, I really like trying new genres. I like experimenting and trying new things. So when just to give you like a little overview, I mean, my very first published series was contemporary middle grade. And so for my next one, I wanted to try speculative. I wrote a paranormal kind of adventure story. The next thing I tried writing was a time travel fantasy. Didn't get published, but I still tried. And then I kind of got into dark fairy tale, and that was Olive and the Backstage Ghost and Spell and Spindle. I try hopping genres. I wrote a YA novel. I co-authored it with my friends. I was nervous about that. That was new for me. YA is very, very different from middle grade. And then while we were working on that, we had an editor give us feedback that, you know, the concept of this book is 3 teenage girls with different friend groups are all in a hotel for 5 days at a convention, and you don't have anybody hooking up. Like there needs to be more romance. This is a YA, you know, which isn't necessarily true for every YA, but she was definitely right in that our book needed it. And we discussed it and realized that my character was the best one to have a kind of comically hookup gone wrong in a hotel room. And I was nervous about writing that because I only ever wrote middle grade. You know, you don't write those kinds of scenes with middle grade, but I ended up having a blast with it. It's actually probably my favorite scene that I wrote in that book. So, and now I'm putting kidlit aside for a while because of everything going on in my career, and I'm attempting to write an adult novel for the first time. I'm attempting to write a straight ahead mystery with no speculative elements, and that aside from co-authoring the Kudo Kids series, this is very much a new genre for me. So yeah, I keep trying different things. I don't know if that's good or bad because it definitely means I don't have a brand as an author. I mean, the types of books I have published are all over the place, and if you include the books that I've written that are not published, the genres are even more kind of out there. So I like trying new things. I think hopefully that's an answer to that question. Okay, next from Kanashi. In terms of writing, how do you know if you've gone far enough with description and internal monologue and all that in narration, as well as how to figure out when enough is enough with editing? I think, you know, some of my answer for the previous question, you know, hopefully that applies here as well. How do I know when I've gone far enough? I don't know if I'd phrase it as far enough. It's that when I'm finished with a draft and I'm trying to decide, is this ready for me to send to whoever I'm sending it to next? Here's what it is. Okay, I'll do a read through and pay attention to the parts where I want to skim ahead and acknowledge the fact that the reason I want to skim ahead is because I'm not proud of this part, because the writing is weaker than I know I am capable of, or the scene is just a little bit boring, or I feel like I'm just giving reader information that they need for the next scene, but there's no other purpose to the scene. Something about it makes me want to skim because I'm not proud of it, and then that's when I zero in on that scene and say, okay, what do I need to do to make this a scene that I'm excited to read? Because you want every scene to be one that you're excited to read and that you're proud of. So yeah, I think it's just kind of that gut feeling again. And then as far as when is enough with editing, I think there's a question later about perfectionism, but I will go ahead and say this now. I have never been a perfectionist, and I am not saying this to be self-deprecating or anything like that. It's the truth. I am lazy. I mean, even like as a kid, when it came to work, like my grades were good, but they were never great. And I never had that like competitiveness to turn in the best paper or have the best GPA. I did what I had to do to get B's and some A's sometimes and some C's sometimes, and I was fine with that. I don't know. I am not saying I treat my books like that. I want my books to be as good as they can be, but I also know that there is no way I can go from zero, like just from idea of a book to exactly what I want the book to be without some help. So there's just, once I get that first draft, I know I just need to step aside and let somebody else give me some feedback so I can rest and then kind of regroup and make it a little bit better. And then I'll send it off again and, you know, repeat. And by the time it gets through my agent and then through my editor, and we've probably done a couple of rounds, if my editor expresses confidence in the book, then, and I read it through one more time, I mean, I'm not going to sit there and nitpick it and start second guessing things. That's just like, it's not in my nature. I'm like, okay, I've been working on this for 6 months or longer, probably longer. It's done. It's as good as it's going to get. I am proud to put this out into the world, and I am so ready to move on to the next thing. Annie asked, how do you keep your younger characters authentic so that young readers really connect and relate to them? I had to really think back on this one because I'm sure it's something that I needed to work on when I wrote my very first draft of a middle grade book. It is definitely something that's hard to do. I think a big part of it is, you know, with my first series, I think I've talked about this before, but it was about a 7th grader who was in band in middle school, and there was so much of my own personal experiences as a kid in middle school in this book that it made it even easier for me to draw back on those memories and put that stuff in and like just get into that mindset. And I'll tell you that when I'm critiquing middle grade or working with students who are writing middle grade books and struggling with the authentic voice, the biggest reason I think is because adults, without meaning to, tend to put their adult perspective into the mind of a child. The child protagonist will sound too wise and reflective, and the opposite problem is that the writer will try too hard not to do that, and they will make the child sound more naive than any child truly is. And it's hard to find that balance. Imagine a child, say a 10-year-old, and he's at the dinner table with his parents, and his parents are arguing. But they're arguing in that way parents tend to do in front of their kids, where they're not outright saying what they're mad at each other about or even what the fight is about. It's more the tone and the way they're talking that they're talking about something else, but they don't want the kid to catch on. So the writer who is too reflective and too adult will write a child protagonist who completely reads exactly what is going on and knows what the parents are fighting out. And the writer who goes too far in the other direction, the kid will be almost clueless to what's actually happening. And the thing is, most kids, I mean, all kids are different obviously, but most kids, they pick up on tone, I mean, for sure. And they pick up on subtext. It's just that they don't always know what the subtext means. And that's the kind of nuance you want to write with your kids. That was just one example. It's just one of those things that the more you read excellent middle grade and the more you write it and get feedback on it, the better you're going to understand it and the better you're going to get at it. Annie also asked what my favorite writing resources are. Magazines, how-to books, retreats, online groups. I love reading craft books. I'll read almost any craft book. I can't even list all the ones I've read because there's just too many. I find that even with the ones that aren't so great, I'll find something useful to get out of it. Mostly I just like listening to authors talk about their processes. I really love Masterclass. I know I've talked about that before, but I've just been very slowly going through all of the writers on there. My favorite lessons are the ones where they talk about their personal experiences or like a specific anecdote with when I was plotting this book, blah, blah, blah. Because I find that that's what helps me learn the most. That's when I get something new out of it. It's not just somebody telling me, here's how you plot a novel. Here's how you develop a character. It's like specific anecdotes from master authors or any authors. Seriously, watching anybody's journey is valuable. Talking about how they worked through a problem or how they learned that this plotting method wasn't so good for them, but this one worked really well, stuff like that. And Seo said, I know you've taught English in South Korea and also taught band music in the US, so I was wondering if there's any skill from teaching that you utilize in your writing career. For example, I'm a remote report analyst for an American digital marketing company, and my job requires auditing data and reporting trends and patterns among other info. Because this hones my meticulous skill for noticing small details, this helps my editing process and writing. Also, analyzing patterns helps me examine plot patterns with greater precision. Some people aren't very kind about their day job, so I thought that finding a skill to hone in their writing passion might help them cope. What a really great idea, Seo. You're right. People are really down on their day jobs, and you're absolutely right. Transferable skills are a thing, and I bet you can find them in any job. So for the first 4 years after I graduated college, I was a full-time teacher. Actually, no. Sorry, for the first 6 years after I graduated college, I was a full-time teacher, and then I was a part-time teacher for like at least 7 years after that. And so teaching specifically for like, it's definitely helped me as a ghostwriter, as any kind of like book coach or like in an editor position. Teaching is, I think, helpful for reasons I don't even have to say. Like, I know how to work with people in improving their art, and I can recognize like the vulnerability in doing something like sharing a story with someone. But as far as how like skills I actually took from teaching that transferred to my writing, I think it's because being a teacher, and specifically a music teacher and then a writing teacher, I really learned how to identify insecurities in people, especially kids, and understand how their insecurities manifested in their personalities. Like, what behaviors came from being insecure that she wasn't, you know, a good enough drummer, or he wasn't, you know, writing the fantasy story that he dreamed of writing. It wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, they react in different ways. How they treat other kids could reflect that insecurity. How they talk about themselves in their work when they get stuck, you know, where's that rooted? I think about insecurities a lot when I write about my characters, because even if somebody, everybody has them, even if somebody exudes astounding confidence, there's something they're insecure about. And I think maybe that's something we don't talk about enough when we talk about character development, is that everybody has some sort of insecurity. Some of us have a ton of them, and that's something that is gonna resonate with readers like very much, you know what I mean? So I try to think about that when I develop my characters. I have never based a character on a specific person in my life that I knew, on a student or anything like that, but I have thought about kind of like several students I've had and how different parts of their personalities I could see in one particular character I'm developing, and specifically the insecurities, and that kind of helps bring that character to life in my head. On to Rosa. Pasquale said, how many tricks can you do, Rosa, and can you show them to us? Come here. Ready? Come here. Look. I'll move it all the way over here, okay? Come here. Look. Look at it. Get more. Okay. She can do a few tricks, but she's apparently not going to do them for the camera. I'll see if I can catch her later. So Eliza asked, is your dog named Rosa for a particular reason? My cat is called Aslan because of the movie Narnia, which is such a great cat name. Well done. And I want to combine this one with the next question from Maddie, which is, I have lots of dog questions. How old is she? And do you have any puppy pictures? Do I? So Rosa is currently about 2.5 years old. We got her in the summer of 2019. She was about 8 weeks old, and we had moved back to Dallas February of 2019 and brought our 15-year-old lab with us, and she passed away shortly after we moved here, which, you know, she was old and she lived a good, healthy life, but it was still just incredibly devastating. And we pretty quickly started applying to adoption agencies in the Dallas area. We wanted to adopt a puppy, but you know, it's just the waiting lists are crazy, and we had home visits, we had people come check us out and approve us, but it just wasn't happening. And so while we were waiting, we decided to foster a senior dog. And we went to the Dallas Animal Shelter and found the sweetest old guy. They estimated he was probably about 10 years old, a black lab, who they'd found just living on the streets. And just the absolute sweetest thing. But man, that first day we saw him, he didn't even lift his head up when we came in to meet him. It was like he had just given up on life. And we walked him around, took him out to the yard and everything, and we told him we wanted to foster him. We were working with a rescue organization. And I mean, the moment we put him in our truck to take him home, he was just like transformed. He was just the happy-go-luckiest dog ever. And he didn't have a name. And so the rescue organization told us we could pick a name. So we talked about it and we decided we wanted to name him after a character, like on a show or something. And we decided to go with Jake, after Jake Peralta from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, because he's a happy-go-lucky guy. The personalities kind of matched and we thought it was funny. So we had Jake for a couple of months, and then we adopted Rosa when a friend of Josh's mom saw a Facebook post. It was just people who were like, hey, we've got some puppies. They put this picture up of Rosa and her sister, and we were like, oh my God, and went out immediately and came home with her. And she was instantly obsessed with Jake. Like, Rosa is completely obsessed with all dogs. She just is the most dog-loving dog I've ever met, and she just wanted to be around him all the time. And we had not decided on a name when we adopted her. We were talking about it on the drive home, and we threw out a couple of names, and Josh kind of half-jokingly said, you know, well, if she's gonna be Jake's best friend, maybe we should name her Rosa.
Okay, hold me. Nothing but mouth.
And then when we got home and saw how quickly she took to him, I think it was also the first name we tried out. Like, we just said it and she looked up at us and did the little head tilt, and we were like, okay, your name is Rosa. So yeah, that's why Rosa is named after Rosa Diaz. And additionally funny, and kind of funny, I shouldn't say funny, sad, but funny side story is Jake ended up, we foster failed. He ended up having a terminal thing, and we knew he didn't have much time left, and we didn't want to turn him over to strangers, obviously, so we just kept him until the end, which happened that fall. And when like I said, the rescue organization we worked with was so great. They covered all of his medical bills, and they even paid for the cremation and the ashes and one of those engraved boxes that you get when you lose a pet. And if you've never had to do that before, it's incredibly expensive. And they let us keep his ashes, even though we hadn't officially adopted him. They did that for us. It was the best organization ever. So when I went to pick up the ashes, I was really sad. This was a few days after he died. And I went into his vet, and I had forgotten that when we filled out the form with his name, we had put his full name. So that is why on our bookshelf we have the ashes of Jake Peralta.
Very cool.
Ready? Touch. Good girl. Shake. Good shake. Down. Good job. There's still a treat on the floor. How long will she wait? Go get it. Rosa, go get it. There. Go get it. No? Yes? Hooray. All right, next question. Do you find tracking word counts helpful? What's an average day for you in that regard? And also how much editing as you go is okay, because I find that it almost works as a warm-up as I scan over where I left off and inevitably clean up some things before I start writing new material. Generally, I do track my word counts. Right now, because I'm writing a book in a notebook by hand, I'm not tracking that, but in the past and currently for all the projects I'm working on for clients and things like that, I definitely track my word counts. I would say my word counts tend to be all over the place. The most I've ever written in a day is a little under 11,000 words. That was very much an outlier. But sometimes I have a day where it's less than 1,000 words and that's all I can manage. I think I would say I tend to average between 2,000 and 3,000 words a day. That's probably where I am. As far as going back and editing as you go, I think that is great and I do it as well. I know you've probably heard me in past videos advise against it, but that's only because too often I've seen students get stuck in a self-editing loop where they keep saying, oh no, now I know how to fix the first chapter. Oh wait, no, I'm gonna change it. And then they keep going back and they never move forward. So long as you're aware of that and you do keep making progress in your draft, I think going back and reading to catch up on where you are and get like ready to write for the day and making little fixes as you go, I think that's great. Next question, what is your process for co-writing? I'm going to start a novel next year with another author. Any tips for where to start? Do you have a legal contract drafted up? How do you split revenue? What writing software do you use? How do you split the work? I want this project to be an enjoyable experience for both of us writers. Man, this I should make an entirely different video on or a separate video on, but I will give you the abridged version. One, make sure that you and your co-author, that you're both the right people for this project. It needs to be a project where your particular interests and strengths align. Not everybody is going to be a good co-author. Some authors want to be in full control of the book and there's nothing wrong with that, but it will make for a miserable co-author experience. On everything that I've co-authored before, the project it wasn't just that we randomly wanted to write any book together, it was the idea. With Secrets of Topsy, Kirsten and I at the time, we both had talked about how in middle grade, our middle grade stories are very different, but we grew up on Sideways stories from Wayside School. We absolutely loved that. We were very inspired by it. We were also at the time listening to the Welcome to Night Vale podcast. Those were our two pitches for that series, and it was where our weirdness aligned, and that was why we were great co-authors together. Yeah, you just want to make sure that it's a good fit and a good match. As for legal contracts, if you are not agented or anything like that, you could draw up a contract. I'm trying to remember now, this is why I should make a separate video on this. Our agents, we were both represented at the time by different agencies, and our agents did draft up a contract explaining how we would split the copyright and any money that the book would make if it sold. Yeah, so, and it did, I think there was some wording in there putting equal, what's the word? Responsibility on both of us for actually writing the draft. So there definitely was that. And then when we got an offer from a publisher and we got a contract, both of our agencies together negotiated the contract to make sure everything was an exact even split down the middle. As for writing software for that project and for the Pros of Cons, which I co-authored with two other authors, we used Google Docs. I don't usually use that for when I'm writing a book by myself, but for co-writing, it's great because you can be in the document and see each other work in real time. You can leave each other comments and things like that. You're both always having access to the most current document. When you start trying to swap Microsoft Word documents back and forth via email or whatever, it gets super messy, especially when you're talking about revisions and things like that. So I would recommend Google Docs for sure. Dennis asked, is there a point when you stop feeling nervous about sharing your writing with others? Gosh, when I think back to the first time I did it, I was like equal parts excited and nervous because I was a little bit delusional about how good my first book was. So I thought I was going to get like a ton of praise. And fortunately for me, I did have a beta reader who was very encouraging and lavish with the praise, but also pointed out a lot of like very big flaws. I don't get nervous about it anymore. I think a huge part of that though is that I have had the same beta readers for years and years and I'm very comfortable with them. They know my strengths and weaknesses as a writer. In many cases, we have co-authored together, as I just talked about. So I know they know my writing, and I don't feel weird about showing them like an early draft or a first draft because I know it's going to get better, and they know it's going to get better, so it doesn't make me feel weird. If I were to get a brand new beta reader right now, like share a work in progress or a very rough first draft with someone I'm not that comfortable with, I would probably still get a little nervous. I mean, I'm going to be nervous when I start querying literary agents and I have agents reading my very polished manuscript again. Absolutely, that's going to be scary. So I think, yeah, there's always going to be just a little bit of fear, but I hope for you that there's some excitement too, because this is why we write stories, right? And we want others to read them. And then Sherry asked, I know it seems like a boring topic, but I'm polishing my last revision and I'm starting to question how I formatted phone calls, emails, and text messages in my novel. There aren't a lot, but enough that if I've done it wrong, I'm concerned it'll look unprofessional. Okay, so let me put your fears to rest here. There is actually no one right way. I know there is manuscript formatting. We all know doublespace, Times New Roman, you know the drill. For your book, when it goes on submission or when you start querying, yes, there is a format for that. But when it comes to phone calls, scripts, like if you have, say, a podcast script or a TV show script or something like that in your book, or text messages, obviously we have a lot of those, there is no one right way to do it. And in fact, they're going to change it in copy edits. I have written books for a few different publishers where I had definitely a lot of text messages, and in some cases like forum posts, blog posts. In my Kat Sinclair Files series, she has a blog post at the start of every chapter, and what they do is they go in and they choose a special font for it, and they also play with the design of it itself. So it really doesn't matter what you do because they're going to change it. It's visually going to be like, it's going to stand out. I know, I think in the Girls Who Code series, Penguin was the publisher for that one, and they took the text messages and actually made them look like they were in the little bubbles. But then at Scholastic, I have one book with text messages and I don't think they did that. I think they just gave it a special font. It doesn't matter. I would say that whatever you do, keep it simple. Don't get too fancy with it, and especially remember that if you try like a really fancy font, or if you try to insert an image, if the agent or editor is reading that manuscript, if they download it and they're like reading it on their Kindle or some other device, it might actually change that font or that image because it doesn't have it on file. So it could make your formatting look really wonky, or worse, make it impossible to actually read the words that you wrote. So honestly, what I do when I'm writing text messages or anything like that in a document, like in a manuscript, I just put the initials of the character and a colon, and then I put their text message and I put it in italics, and then I put the response, the initials of that character, italics, and then that's it. So it's obvious what it is, and you know, it's clean, and I know there isn't going to be any transfer issues depending on what device they're reading it on, and then they can just do whatever they want to do with it once it's into copy edits. Guys, okay, a few things. I am halfway through these questions. I just completely underestimated my ability to get this done, and it is now Thursday, and I want to get this video up tomorrow, and I have some exciting news. Well, first of all, I think I told you guys weeks ago, but I am going on a writer's retreat with my friends in the woods for a week. I'm leaving on Saturday, so I have a lot of stuff to do the rest of today and tomorrow, and I will be vlogging the entire time, so look for a Writers in the Woods vlog coming, probably not next week because I'll need time to edit it, but the week after that. The other thing is, this morning I was actually on a call with Daniel Wallace, who organizes the summits that I think a lot of you guys have attended in the past. Over the summer, I did the Find Your Next Reader Summit and talked about YouTube for authors, which was super fun. And last year, I did the Escape the Plot Forest Summit, which was great. And this fall, he's doing another Escape the Plot Forest Summit. And when he asked me if I wanted to speak at it, I said yes, but the dates actually conflict with my retreat. The summit is not this weekend, but the weekend after, and I'll still be traveling. So we decided that we would pre-record my talk this morning, and that's what I did. And my topic was how to write a mystery without plotting. If you've been following my vlogs, you already know pretty much all of this process because you've seen me kind of work through how I'm doing this, but what I did for the presentation, I hope, is made it more clear. I actually came up with a brand new premise for a mystery novel that is pretty hilarious, I think, and I walked through exactly how I would plan out brainstorming all of my characters and coming up with lots of conflict and scene ideas, but then have multiple different plots and twist endings that are possible, and then discovery write my way through that story so that I'm not locked into any outline or any particular outcome, and there's still like a lot of room for exploration and spontaneity. And to be honest with you, I'm very happy with how it turned out. It was really fun to kind of like throw a premise for a mystery novel up on the screen and then just like kind of walk through in real time as I recorded it how I would do it, and I'm happy with how it came out. So that is going to be, shoot, should have looked up the date before I sat down in front of the camera. I will pop it up on the screen here, but if you would like to come to the event, I will be there answering questions in the chat room as the presentation goes on. Tickets are free. There is also an upgraded ticket version that gives you lifetime access to all of the talks at the summit, but you can just have a free pass and show up the day of the talk and watch it, and I would love to see you there, and I will have a link to that in the description down below. So that was all to say that obviously I still have a lot more questions to answer, and I think what I'm going to try to do is to answer them tomorrow before I pack, and then I will be able to edit that video while I'm on the retreat and get it up to you Friday. So next Friday will be part 2 of this Q&A. If your question was not answered today, it will be answered next week. This was the longest outro ever filmed. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next Friday with another video. Bye.